Hello and welcome to the Film Ireland podcast. I'm Gemma Creagh and I'm chatting with Simon Chambers about his wonderful documentary, Much Ado About Dying. And have a listen to the trailer here.
When life's good, it's very, very good. When it's bad, it's horrid.
What do you do if your uncle says he's dying and you're the only person in the world that can look after him?
I'm just saying I think it's OTT to buy 4 of everything.
Don't think like that.
Have you got any more of these big ones, please?
1, 2, 3, 4 is OTT, be careful. But if you go 6, 7, then you're buying too much stuff. Oh, that was my finger.
It wasn't.
You know, bossy uncle and
Bossy nephew.
And bossy nephew, absolutely. All the world's a stage, and all the men and women merely players.
What do you do when you're dragged into a mess that's exactly like the Shakespeare plays that he used to act in?
Which of you, shall we say, doth love us most?
I'm a bubbly person.
And he wants to give his kingdom away to a hot anthropology student he's fallen in love with.
He received £25,000 from you.
I'm intuitional about money. I don't really think of figures.
Everyone!
Why was I always the boring one, standing at the edge, never doing anything right?
Because everybody keeps saying, put him in a home, put him in a home.
I know they do.
And
Thank
you
God
don't want to be in a home.
Nor do I need to be in a home.
And then King Lear had his storm.
Death. It's like going on the most wonderful holiday without any of the bother of packing.
It's so beautiful and so personal. Like it's almost like you get to know someone so well while watching it. Like it was actually one of the hardest things to do is come up with questions, because normally you just go, what's the technicality? How do you work with this? And you're like, oh wow, like I feel like I know so much about you from watching this film, and it's beautiful. Like it's just so beautifully captured and so moving. So thank you so much for making it and to give me the opportunity to watch it and for chatting with us today.
Thank you. Well, one of the things about it being so personal is I actually, because that's partly why I put that India stuff at the beginning, because that's the kind of ethnographic documentary filmmaker, the Brit, colonial Brit abroad. Look at these people, look at how they live. Isn't that interesting? And so I really thought that was a great contrast to be going from that to suddenly somebody's going, hey, you need to come and look after me. Hey, why don't you make a film about me too? And I like that personal thing, especially for men to be personal, I think is more, sometimes it's harder as well because we're not used to it, but is just more of a special thing really for men, especially older men like myself. To be personal and to talk about our feelings and in that way, and to show love that's not just the classic kind of romantic love or love for children or something.
And there's so much. Like I'm going to dig down into that. I'd like to start off just at the beginning, and if you could talk about your space up until this film, your professional space, where you are, what brought you to India. You insinuated an existential crisis sort of brought you to do that job in India. So I'd love if you could just say, talk to us about where you are leading up to where the film is.
I suppose I had a bit of an existential crisis in I'd made another film in India and I kept going back to India. It became a bit like a second home. And there's things I loved about it, but I thought, so I was making a film about the traffic in Delhi because I thought that it was a really good metaphor for the social hierarchies, because I was working for Oxfam and they wanted me to do something about the inequalities index. And India is quite high on inequalities. So I was going around there's loads of people that drive Rolls Royces over there. And so I was filming people in Rolls Royces, and then another day I'd be filming someone on a bicycle who was sort of cycling all the way across town to deliver a fridge or something. And my existential crisis really was about just being on the outside and looking at everybody and feeling everybody else is living their lives and they seem to be getting on with it. I think it's quite a common thing because I think we all think that at times. You know, you're looking at other people's lives and thinking, oh, that looks much better. And then I was thinking, oh, people say, that's fabulous. You're in India making films. Wow. And I was thinking, it's not that great. And
Yeah.
so I was thinking, something's not right. There's something missing. And then when I reluctantly went back to London, it took me a long time, but I figured out it was because I wasn't engaged. And
And this was when you got the call in the beginning of
yeah,
the documentary,
so
just in case anyone hasn't seen it, that you get that call from your uncle.
yeah. And I got that call when I was over in India. He was calling me all the time, and I didn't take him seriously at the beginning because I got friends to go around, and they said, "Oh, he's fine." But so before that, I was a youth worker for a long time, and actually, that's one of those jobs where if you like doing it, you're totally wrapped up and involved with all these people, and it's a fabulous thing. And you feel even now, 20 years later, I see grown-up people who I don't recognize, and they stop me in the street and say, "Hey, you're the guy that we went kayaking with, and we went camping with you." And so you kind of are involved in life, and you're, and it's, and then when I stop doing that, and then when you're making films, your connection is slightly different. Like I don't know if it's fair to say, voyeur, a bit of a voyeur or something, but you are looking in from the outside. And film documentaries take you right into people's lives. You're sitting in somebody's house and you're part of it all, but it's a weird relationship where you're not in it, but you're kind of looking from the outside in, from a very privileged position of being allowed that access. And so really, while I was comparing it to, say, like a family like you've got. A lot of the time, people are going, "Oh God, I got to get the kids. Oh, so-and-so's got a cold and I've got to take them to piano lessons." But they moan a lot. But then in the next sentence, they'll be saying, "Oh, Kit, it's the best thing I ever did. Best thing I ever did with my life." And so there's that weird kind of, the idea that what you kind of moan about is what you actually enjoy doing. Or in my case, I didn't want to look after Uncle David. It was the last thing I wanted to do. But actually, sometimes doing something, it gives you a connection and you still moan about it or make a film about it or something. But, you have to engage, don't you? You're engaged, and I was engaged with my uncle for that time. And so I think that's what a lot of the existential crisis was, really, is not really being engaged, being free and, hey, I'm going to go to Sri Lanka and film this. Oxfam have asked me to go to Calcutta,
And if you were in jobs where you chose to move on, was that sort of a choice that you made that you're like, okay, I'm doing this very emotionally intense, but also emotionally quite draining, I would say.
Yeah.
Like all of those
But there
for
are some documentary filmmakers that I know. They they're wonderful films, but they might not be that emotionally um, engaged in it, or they might not be, if I do interviews with people, it's not nearly as intimate and emotionally involved as what I do in this film and what I've tried to do in my other films. And so I suppose I end up going for those kind of intense, short, emotional thing, emotional um, experiences, because the films that I love, including documentaries, are the ones that are emotional. And I went to the National Film School. I trained there at the beginning of the 2000s. And at that time, a couple of our teachers who taught documentary said, always go for the emotion in a film. There's the information. A lot of documentaries are about information. So you can read the information, you can watch the information as an audience and feel, oh, now I know all about nuclear power stations. But if you go for the emotion and the human experience, then I think you understand it in a way. There's a difference between knowing and understanding. And so one of the things that I love about fiction films is usually they're character based, and you go on a journey with a character. You're with that character and you can identify with that character, even if they're from a completely different background to you. You can end up being, a tribal person from Mali because you're on that journey with them and you empathize with them. And you go on their journey and their story and you kind of understand them. Whereas there could be a documentary where you might learn all the information about the tribe and everything, and the landscape and the plight of their experience, or the wonders of their music, or whatever it is. But that emotional involvement is really important to me in my films, and so I wanted to make a film. When I decided this film was going to happen with Uncle David, I thought we have to go on that emotional journey because that's the thing that audiences will relate to, and they'll come on it with us.
And so one of the and I'll go into the practicalities because I feel like the themes might be heavy. So there's one or two things I just don't want to miss out on asking them just in case. One of the things that you have written in your credits, and I was like, I viscerally felt this. It was like, this is a completely independent, non-funded, no budget film, but it does have developed assistance from Screen Ireland.
Yeah.
So I wanted to just ask a little bit about that and then lead into the choice of why you started to film or what was your thinking there. So just first that I like it was just a very honest statement because sometimes people have attachment things and they're like, oh, it's like we've dipped into this completion fund or we've done this, but really it was a labor of pure pain the whole way through and then something a little bit at the end. So just I liked that statement being there, but what was the thought process behind it?
So, well, I just started filming David because he told me to. He said, "Oh, why don't you bring your camera?" And you're a filmmaker for God's sake. What's your problem? And I just thought, there's no, I wouldn't want to watch a film really about an old man and a middle-aged man, or an old man. Just there's no development, nothing happens. And so I started filming, and I had all this footage. And then actually I thought, you know what? There's some pretty amazing stuff in here. So then I showed it. Everybody I showed it to was going, nah, I don't know. And then I showed it to David Rain from Soil Shoe Films in Ireland, who's a friend of mine. And he said, "Oh, wow, this is great. Yeah, you have to make a film out of this." And so the thing is, I just started making it at home, on a table in my bedroom on the laptop. And we tried applying for funding. We applied for loads of funding and didn't get it. But then after a certain time, you've put so much time and effort into making something that it would be a waste not to try and finish it. And I just thought, you know what, there's some really good stuff here. I think it will make a great film. And then that was when COVID was on. And then David asked Screen Ireland, and they gave us some development money, €15,000.
Big shout out to Screen Ireland. Yeah.
Yeah, shout out
Yeah.
there. And so that we used that money to get a professional editor, because the thing when you make a personal story about something that you know too well is you can't get the distance from it to know what's interesting and what's not interesting. And so we got her to do 8 weeks of bashing a kind of structure, and that worked really well. That was an editor called Claire Ferguson. And then after that, we were on our own, and we kept applying for funding. And by that time, the film was getting quite good, actually. It's getting towards what it looks like now.
And had all the sort of, I don't want to give too many spoilers away, but the drama unfurled. This had happened. It was cut, basically. Or is this like in the process?
No, it was pretty much cut. We had an assembly or a rough cut. And so we kept applying for money and funding from various places, but we never got any. And so we just had to keep going. And then when it was funny, because then we had so many rejections, you do start to think, hang on a minute, maybe they're right. Maybe this isn't very good. And so then but there was something in the film. I thought, no, this has got something here. It's telling us something. I haven't seen a film like this before. And David was saying, come on, we've got to finish it. And then he managed to pull out some stops, and we got a fabulous composer who lives down in Cork called Irene Buckley, who just worked on that Sinead O'Connor film, the documentary. And then we got another editor that helped a little bit, who's from Kells. So
Irish connection, yeah.
I know. And then we put it in for festivals, and again it got rejected a lot. But then it suddenly got into IDFA, which is a big one in Amsterdam, the International Documentary Festival, Amsterdam. And then it won a prize there. And then after that, really it was chocks away. And then all these other festivals said, some of the ones that had rejected it actually, said, we'd like to show it now. Yeah.
Your uncle is just an incredibly engaging character to watch. And I think it speaks so much to loneliness, to your uncle, he goes to he goes into the home or to the hospital, and he's so delighted with the engagement with people. And it speaks so much to how actually isolated he was. And he's obviously such an extrovert, such an extrovert.
Yeah, it's lovely. I know the first time he's in the hospital, he says, it's amazing, it's marvelous, it's just non-stop. Yeah, today I had custard and apple crumble, and yeah, he loved it. He loved being part of a community.
So talk to me about, like, you started to film it. Did it start off as like, oh, there might be something there, or is it like, okay, I'll film you, like this is like, and then blossom into something? What was that process?
So really, I I was going over and I was looking after David, and I was going twice a week, maybe getting a bit of shopping, cutting his toenails or fixing something up. And then he said to me, "Why don't you bring your camera? You're a filmmaker, for God's sake." And remember, he's an actor, so actors, never really seem more alive than when they're performing or on stage. And so I reluctantly brought the camera, and then he'd sort of do these, actory Laurence Olivier style Shakespearean quotes. And then I just filmed bits, really, thinking nothing would happen. But the great thing was we got on much better when the camera was around, because we had a lot of fun with it. So the fact the camera it facilitated a new kind of relationship between us. And we did loads and loads of Shakespeare bits, which aren't in the film. And then I realized that there was a sort of connection here with Uncle David's life and King Lear, the play, because he'd also been giving money away and that kind of thing. And so I was trying to push him towards, let's do a King Lear in your kitchen, and we can get some of your friends to come and play different parts, and then we'll turn it into a film. But he said, no. We're going to have to do Hamlet and Romeo and Juliet as well. So then it was a sort of, I felt there's no drama here. There's no, it's about someone who just gets older and older. Maybe they end up going to hospital for a bit, coming out, but there's no real drama. Then I was driving back from Wales and I got a call from the police. And they said, "Oh, your uncle's burnt his house down to the ground." And then I thought, "Oh, geez." And the whole time I was going, "Oh, God, geez." No, another thing.
Because you're watching the space heater next to all the books. Like I was at the beginning just going,
Did you think, oh, was it
the smoking gun? It's like a smoking space heater that was melted. I was like, oh my God.
We had all these burn marks on his clothes, you see, as well. And I'd say, look, this is really dangerous. We've got to do something. And I got the fire brigade to come in as well. Like 4 big burly firemen came in, and I thought, oh, he'd like it because they're like
strapping and handsome. Yeah.
Handsome, strapping firemen. But that didn't really work. So by the end of the day, I was just saying to people that came, please do not buy these heaters. He's going to make you buy these heaters, but please don't. And then that's when he started calling me, oh, the bossy nephew. And I was finding other heaters that were safer. So, when I got that phone call from the police, I thought, this is really like just one more thing. Where's he going to live? What's going to happen? And it's just terrible. But then there was this kind of Graham Greene, the writer, says in every writer there's a shard of glass. And my shard of glass was, oh my God, there's a lot of drama now for a film, because he's going to be in hospital, he's got nowhere to live, he's got nothing, and suddenly it was like there's too much drama. And so really that's when I thought, oh, I am going to make this into a film, because it's an important subject about how do you look after someone when they get old. And David seemed to, all the things that happen to old people and the carers that are looking after them seem to be happening in David's life. Like he'd been giving money away, he's got medical problems, he's safety issues, loneliness issues. And I thought,
When the kidnapping request came in, like again, like I'm not gonna go too far into it because it's a very interesting reveal as part of the story, but like yeah, there's an incident that happens and you are like, oh God, this is like textbook 101 and not a great thing.
yeah. So that's really when I thought, oh yeah, there's a film. And then I started filming a bit more deliberately then and thinking, okay, I'm going to try and make this into a documentary. And the idea came really that I was trying to make the parallels with King Lear, which I didn't know at all because Shakespeare's just goes straight over my head. I can't understand a word of it. But I do think now it's a brilliant play. And I started sort of trying to make the parallels. I thought that would be fun because David keeps on, like he burst into Shakespeare in the middle of like his, there's bit in the film where he's just taking off his clothes and then he just goes, "What is man? Nothing but a bare-forked animal." Or, he's doing something else. He goes, "This is Act 3, Scene 2." And I sort of realized that he lived his life like it's a play. And there are some benefits to that because it means that you go, whenever you have a bad moment in your life, you can sort of go, oh yeah, this is the bad bit.
Oh yeah.
And it's going to get good. And it's a bit like what I realized, and it makes him a lot happier. So for example, when these terrible things do happen to him, he just says, "I'm free, I'm liberated. I don't have to worry anymore about that." And what I realized is it's a bit like that Buddhist thing of being able to observe. You observe your life from outside. While you're in something, you're also able to observe from the outside. So I think that's what he did, but in a different way through acting, because he was going, he'd see his life as a structure of a play. And even at the end, when he's about to die, he's saying, oh yeah, it's all making sense now. For the first time, it makes sense because I'm not in the middle of it. I'm not living it. I can look back and it feels good to understand that I can see why things happen now.
And he's so profound. Like in those moments, he's so profound and you just get a sense where he gets so much joy from knowing he's being filmed. And you think how much he would love to be here, like listening to this podcast in his kitchen or going to the premieres, being all glammed up, like it's like if you think about a way to honor somebody in a way that really kind of, but you can see that aliveness in him. There was a moment, and you captured it really beautifully, where he's talking about people that are his carers in it, and I don't know if he's thinking about it in the abstract or trying to rewrite it or just believes it or just wants us to believe it as the viewer in what their intentions are. He's talking the carers that lived with him, the Piantini, and and he kind of like he's sort of like, the way he's so bravado, and there's just a little vulnerable, like he feels more vulnerable, or like the armor isn't fully there, and he's talking about it, and in a way that I wasn't sure if he believed their intentions or just didn't want to do anything that would stop the relationship in that kind of unhealthy relationship. So if he was trying to convince himself or trying to convince us. I wasn't sure. You might know, or you might go, I don't know, he's an enigma.
Well, one of the things about being a family carer that I've discovered, having talked now to many, many other family carers, and when we've taken the film round, also listening to other people's stories, is that certainly people get lonely, and so they make lots of connections with other people that are prepared to come in and help in some way, and give them money. And there's never this clarity about whether it's an abusive relationship or whether
Or transactional.
a transactional one. And I think this is one of the things that you really struggle with when you're looking after an older person, is they've had all this independence in their life. It's not like looking after a child or a baby where they haven't had any independence yet. But an older person's had all this independence. And now you're saying, this is not a good idea. These dangerous electric heaters you've got are not a good idea. I don't think you should use them. Or I'm not sure about these people that are coming in. Maybe you're giving them a bit too much money. And he'll say, what are you saying? We love each other. Now, that's one of the things that I struggled with as a carer. And I struggled having to represent that in the film in a way in which all the uncertainty is there. Like, clearly there was love there. And clearly one of the worst things for somebody like my Uncle David, and I think a lot of older people, is the loneliness. And so you're prepared to do a hell of a lot in order to overcome that loneliness. So the editor that worked on this film, while this was going on, her mum, she said, oh, it's exactly the same. She's got these gardeners, but they never do any gardening. They all sit and have cups of tea all day with her mum, because her mum would rather that she had somebody to talk to, and the grass was right up to their waists. So, and I think that's the way it is, really. I don't know what the answer is. I don't know. I had a few discussions with those carers and said, I don't think it's a good idea if you do this, or I think that seems quite a lot of money, for doing his shopping or that kind of thing. And then David would say, just stay out of it. Shut up. What do you know? Stop being bossy. It's really difficult to know where to stand. Again, he's got this person that clearly he fancies in some way, Rodrigo. And, I think of myself, if I was 85 and I had the hots for some like handsome 30-year-old, then wouldn't it just be brilliant? I don't know. I would think, yeah, I'll give everything away to that person. It's a very difficult.
Or people are sugar daddies all the time, like.
It's a very difficult question
Yeah.
to answer.
If it's a clear transactional like again, you're like, what? Yeah, like when does it cross the line into something? I think if it's unfair or untrue or not, I don't know. Yeah.
So we had this brilliant. I found an organization which was called Opening Doors London, and unfortunately it's closed down now. But they provide befrienders to LGBT older people. So they provided a befriender to David, and this person would come once a week, and it was very strict rules. You come for an hour, you're not allowed to take money, you're not allowed to take gifts, and you're not allowed to stay for longer than an hour, because the old person might want, they'll find ways of trying to get you to stay longer, like, oh, do you think you could change a light bulb upstairs, that kind of thing. And you're not allowed to do any of that. It's just about sitting, talking. And that was brilliant for David. So I think it'd be great to have more of that for older people. And in Holland, I found that they actually put students who need cheap accommodation together with older people in old people's homes, and they get them to sort of live together. And I think that's a brilliant idea. So there's also another thing on that question of, advocating for an older person. So there's a bit in the film where, David's become homeless. And I'm thinking, oh no, what am I going to do now? I felt like I was having a nervous breakdown. And I found out later on that, for example, in Ireland, there's so many like family carers doing all this work for free, looking after granny, mom, uncle. Those people, they found the carers are 1.5 times more likely to have mental health issues just because of the stress of it, on top of maybe raising a family, doing a job, all of that sort of thing. Not only are running around doing the school run, but you've got to go and get granny's supper and all of that. So I felt like I was going to have a nervous breakdown. And that's when my sister stepped in and said, listen, we're really worried about you. Uncle David was living in temporary accommodation. We need to do something. And so my sister's literally said, he's going in a home. This is, it's too bad. And David had always said, I'm not going in a freaking home. And anyway, we pretty much not hijacked. What's the word? We pretty much
scooped him up. You used is the word. Scooped him up.
We scooped him up, and he wasn't really sure about it at all. And he'd always said, I'm not going in a home. And then actually, that was one of the best things that happened to him, because A, the loneliness was dealt with. B, he got lots of really good care and food.
And he was with his people.
And he was with other actors because it was an actors' care home. Now, he'd always said, over my dead body, am I going in a care home? But that's a great example of, well, when you're a carer for somebody, do you always do what they want you to do? Or do you actually think, no, I'm going to do what I think is best? And that's one of those terrible kind of conundrums that you're in as a carer.
Yeah. And is it hard to watch this now? Has enough time gone by that you can, like, I can imagine editing it would be very difficult. Or was it?
Not at all hard.
Because it was such a,
No, it's not at all hard. I actually really like it. I love it. There's always things when you're a filmmaker where you go, oh, I wish I'd done that slightly differently, or oh, that's not great. But I like the film because A, he's such a fun, he's just such a charismatic, fun person that you can watch him for, you can watch him forever, and he just brings so much to the screen, and there's so much. I know it's called Much Ado About Dying, and it is about getting old and somebody dying, but there's just so much joy in it for me, actually. There's so much, he gives so much, and I think he's incredibly generous. And you can just, I like sneaking in at the end of the film, when it's showing in cinemas, and then I just hear the audience, they're laughing, and then the lights go up, and there's quite a few people with a few little tears in their eyes, and I'm like, oh no, I hope you're not upset. And they're like, no, it's not tears of upsetness, it's more just being incredibly moved by it. And so I'm actually really happy with the film, and I can watch it. I don't go in and watch it all the time, but I love the film. I'm really happy with it.
So was there sort of a catharsis to the process, and a celebration of his life? Would that be because I do, like, you do get it, like it seemed like the responsibilities involved were quite intense and difficult, and, like, I mean, some of the situations you were faced with, and I'm sure, like, you're trying to do your own stuff, teaching, organizing things, getting to work, and then to get those calls, can just be, and you never know when the next one is coming, like in a way. Um like that process seemed very stressful. Like, was there an element of editing it when, like, like you can kind of think back to like what it felt like in that moment and you're back there, or it helped, or do you just, as a documentary filmmaker, distance yourself? Because that's the thing. Like, I actually, after watching the film, I was thinking about how like all the questions that I'm going to ask you were so personal, instead of like, which feels very intrusive for this, for a film show, like, you know. Then, like, is that something you do to separate yourself?
So first of all, it's not at all intrusive because that's what I want. I want people to ask these questions and to think about these things and to be honest and to be intimate. And it doesn't matter if you know someone or you don't know them. I think it's great to start talking more intimately about some of these facets of life. It was an incredibly cathartic experience for me, and it's cathartic in as we're saying, you don't know whether you've done the right thing at the time, but life's going on. You've got to make decisions. You've got to sort a problem out. And you don't know if your judgment's right. And at the same time, you don't, with family members, you love each other, but you're always going to want to strangle each other as well at points. That's an integral part of love. And so with Uncle David, there were times when I was just so infuriated with him because I'd be trying to do something really simple, like just get a district nurse, get him to open the door to a district nurse, and he'd mess it all up because he'd just end up talking to them about the time when he played Hamlet at the Criterion Theatre, that sort of thing. And then there'd be no time to sort out all the real things that needed sorting out. And I get infuriated with him. Also, I get infuriated with him because this is in the film. Sometimes family members take each other for granted, and I'll be doing all this stuff and he'll go, "Oh no, you got me the wrong honey again. I told you I don't like the set honey, I like the runny honey." And then some other person from outside would come in and they just buy something that they just grabbed quickly from the local store, and then he'd be over the top about it and how amazing they were. And so you get taken for granted. So there's a lot of resentment tied up in the care and the love. And actually making the film really helped me to try to figure out what had gone on and to try and represent it in a way that felt right to me. So I reclaimed David in a way. And, I saw all the funny side of him and the entertaining and the profound side of him that sometimes just got lost in all the day-to-day stuff of cutting your toenails.
Is there anything that you would you have started filming earlier? Is there anything that, if you had gotten all the money, all the money that you had asked for, that you would have gone back and said, like, I would have liked to have covered this, but I couldn't get the rights, or I couldn't. Is there anything else?
Yeah, I would have actually liked to have had somebody to help me because I did everything on my own. And so while I was busy caring for him, and it was really 80% caring, 20% filming, I didn't really have time to think about the filming. And so I could have got someone else to help a little bit with doing research or getting permissions from, like, you're not really meant to film in hospitals. So we do that sneakily. Making film, that's why they have all those credits at the end, because there are so many people doing all these little jobs. But when you're doing it on your own, you're kind of doing all those jobs. And it would have been great to have people to help do that. It would have been great to have an editor for a longer time. I would have probably started earlier. I would have liked to have shown a bit more of his background, how he was younger, so I could have maybe got somebody to try and find some archive footage of when he was a drama teacher and an actor and all of that kind of stuff. But it didn't matter in the end. You know, it's fine the way it is. It would have just made it a whole lot pleasant and easier. Because I'm kind of frazzled now, having done the film. I don't think I can do another one. It does take it out of you, you know. It'd be like having kids or something, and then your kids are teenagers, and then suddenly you go, "Hey, guess what? We're gonna have a baby." I mean, I'm kind of wiped out and frazzled from it. The thing of, have I got it right? Have I represented everything right? You see, it's a bit like maybe you're asking about, was it a cathartic experience? And in a funny way, it might be a bit like therapy, you know, especially editing the film, because you're trying to tell the story to yourself in a way that makes it sound right and that you can live with. And I think that's what a lot of talking therapies are, where something traumatic might have happened or something worrying happens, and then you're trying to tell yourself a story which you can live with and settles, you know, puts it to sleep, and you go, okay, I feel happy now, I can move on. And I think making the film was a bit like that, trying to get it right. Did I get David right? Because, you know, he was incredibly funny, but sometimes if you had a bit too much of him, he could be a crushing bore, and you just think, I want to get out of here. I've been here for 2 hours. I want to get out. And I would sometimes just go off for a coffee in a cafe and come back again. So it's really, yeah, that's tiring. That's draining. And on top of that, not having any funding to do any of this. And I suppose mainly it's the belief that someone else believes in it enough to give you some funding. That's why we were so grateful to Screen Island. But does somebody believe in this? And if nobody believes in it, that's another kind of hurdle that you've got, because you're thinking, I'm making this, I'm spending so much time on it, I believe in it, but nobody else does. Now, is that the first sign of madness, where you think something that nobody else thinks? Either you're mad or you're a genius. So I sort of felt I was a bit mad at times, and that didn't have any validation from the film world.
Is this bit talking about it a lot and doing Q&As and meeting people that this will have really affected? Is this kind of drawing a good bit out? And how do your family feel?
Yeah, this is fabulous because, you know, going around doing the Q&As, first of all, you see how much the audiences love the film and how much it means to them. And then they're all saying, oh, we've got to get so-and-so to come and see this because, you know, it'll mean so much to them because they're a carer, they're looking after so-and-so. There's so much of that. And then the questions that people ask are just incredible. And what I've found is that people want to talk about their own experiences, and they want that platform and that space to be able to just say, you know, I've been looking after my dad for 10 years or something like that. I mean, when the film was first shown in Amsterdam, this woman jumped off her bicycle and gave me a big hug in the street. I didn't know who she was. And she said, I've got to give you a big hug because I saw your film yesterday and I'm a carer myself. I look after my mum. And whenever I go to dinner with people, you know, they'll say, hey, what do you do? And I'll say, oh, I'm a carer. I look after my mum. And then they'll pat me on the shoulder and say, good for you. And then they'll turn around and I'll just see their back for the rest of the night because they talk to somebody else. Because they think it's not interesting. They think that it's undervalued and that there's nothing to talk about there. And so what I've found is that people are going, great, now we're allowed to talk about this. It's a weird sort of taboo. And then the other thing that people have really wanted to talk about is their own mortality. Because what Uncle David does so well is he's coming towards death. You know, I've always thought actors, what's their job? What's what's the point of them? What's their purpose? And really, actors they're reflecting our world back at us, whether it's on a stage or on the television. You know, they're showing us our world, our lives, our values, our fears, our hopes. I think that's what actors do. And that's what David's doing right up to the end of his life, is he's doing this amazing gift. He's giving us an amazing gift, really. He's showing us, he's talking us through his own process of dying, but in the most kind of joyful way, in a way. Or, you know, he just says, oh, you know, I think today might be a good day to die. I don't know. Let's see. That kind of thing. And then you know, as he is dying, he sort of does this lovely, he sort of quotes a poem, and then he starts singing a line that I will survive. So he's kind of talking us through. And mostly when you see depictions on screen of people dying, you know, it's either a violent death with guns and knives or something like that, or it's an incredibly passive death where somebody just rolls their head to one side and their eyes close. And David's sort of talking us through it and telling us how he feels. And at one point he says, oh, so this is a kind of bliss. So I think a lot of people love that. They love talking about that because it is a taboo. You know, we don't really talk about our own mortality and how we feel about how we, you know.
We're all going to be there one day, everyone. And it's scary for people, I think, as well. But he's such a beautiful person to be the one to explain that. Again, like you kind of feel like he would love the conversation of this. And it's funny. So if we're, as an audience, if we're watching it, like it's dramatic, it's tense, but he's such a kind of warm, brilliant character that there's such humor in all elements of it, no matter how bleak it gets.
Yeah, I think it was because he is a very funny person and he does see the humor in things, and he always has. And that's really given him a great life to be able to see the funny side of things. But also he's just comes up with such funny comments, like when he's in the ambulance. He's so excited. He's singing, isn't he? Singing, we're all going on a summer holiday.
And he's like, I'm a socialist.
Yeah. Because he wants to he's always trying to have these lovely chats with whoever it is he meets. And so with the guy in the ambulance, he wants to say, you know, I'm a socialist. Oh, Margaret Thatcher, she was terrible. And you know, he just wants to talk to anybody he can. I mean, that used to be a bit embarrassing when I used to go off. You know, we'd get on a train and he'd start talking to some poor young woman that was sitting opposite, and then he'd sort of get it. He'd say things like, "Oh, my name's David. I'm gay." And the woman would think, "Why are you telling me that? I don't need to know. I don't need to know that." But you know, that was kind of short because he came out when he was about 55 or something, and but one of the things was he didn't have these kind of little things that stopped him from, you know, saying like his social morals or mores were not like everybody else's, you know. So he'd want to get to know the woman that's coming into the hospital that's serving the tea and the coffee, and she'd be wanting to get on to all the other patients, but he'd want to talk to her about her family life and everything. And then he'd tell her that he was gay or that he, you know, I don't know, he came out to his mom and blah 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 blah, and he had this kind of joy about it all, and he has that when he's sort of on his last legs, I think, when he's dying in the bed.
It's just such a wonderful film. I couldn't recommend it more. I also think if there's anyone from the industry listening, there's an organization that do wonderful things called Raising Films Ireland. Raising Films Ireland. They're actually an organization for carers in the film industry, but and they're in the UK as well. But I think it's something that something like this highlights a really important issue, and the only way we can kind of start to make any sort of headway is to band together and watch this film first off. That's the main thing.
Well, yeah, great. I'm really excited because it's going around quite a few cinemas in Ireland during May, and I'm going to be going along with it to do the Q&A. So I'll be hearing lots of stories as well from carers that come to see the film. It's going to be great fun. And I just hope people will come to see the movie, because I think it's one of those small films that once it's gone, it'd probably be difficult to see again.
And it's I think things like that are more powerful as well when it's part of a shared experience. But thank you so much for chatting with us. And
Oh, lovely. It's been great. Thanks so much for taking the time to talk to me as well.
Thank you, Simon. And thank you for listening. You can visit our website now on filmireland.ie, and you can subscribe to our newsletter so you'll never miss another podcast.